This is a public hearing. This is not a Board of Selectmen meeting. We are not going to take any minutes on it. However, it is being recorded. So I'm going to ask when you make comments to please state your name and address. And that way we'll be able to move forward with it. It's going to be a very informal sort of setting tonight. We're here, we've got two suggested ordinances, changes. It's basically an opportunity to comment on them. We'll be going to town meeting where we will vote on them in the future. That'll be scheduled for a later date. So all this is tonight is just a commentary to get feedback, to find out just how people feel about things. My thought is the trailer is going to be a lot simpler than perhaps the animal side of it. And maybe we should start there and just wrap that one up. And there are copies up here for anyone who would like a copy. Take a look at it. And I'm going to ask Jimmy Ventris, he put it together, to comment on it and try to explain just what we're trying to accomplish here.
Got it. Will do. I won it back today. Yeah, more people than someone else said it was going to be.
It says out or something like that.
Okay. Trailer ordinance, initially adopted in 1957, and it was revised in 75 and revised in 79. Hasn't been touched since. This is real simple. There's really three things were changed. The number one was, I guess back in 1979, if you go to camper coaches and travel trailers, it says, and which shall not exceed 8 feet in width and 26 feet in length. Well, it doesn't take too long to drive down the road and figure out that there's units that are 48 feet, 52 feet, 54 feet. So that's what prompted the Planning and Zoning Commission to take a look at this and say this has to go, because that's ridiculous. Maybe if we lived in a lake zone where everybody owned a 50 by 100 lot, it might still be a valid thing. But in today's day and age, that part needed to go. All of the other changes to this existing ordinance have to do with the fire marshal and the health code and just bringing the language up to date. The rest of it is the same as it ever has. There have been some comments that I've received, do we actually need an ordinance for trailers? Well, it's, for those, give you a little history, in 1956 we had a subdivision approval for 400 units. And I can't remember if it was up Tater Hill Way or Mount Parnassus, but there was. So that's how this was prompted way back before I was born. I get to say that. One of the few things I get to say about. So it's in place. And yes, also too, we don't want people living in trailers because they're just not suited for winter use. And I'm not one to sit there and say it's okay and then worry about somebody burning to death. So this, basically the Planning and Zoning Commission went through this, had some meetings, talked about the existing language and requested the selectmen to move forward what is presented here today.
Thank you, Jimmy. One thing I overlooked here, I should have read the notice that we have. It's Town of East Haddam Public Hearing, Municipal Office Complex, Meeting Room 1, 7 p.m. Wednesday, January 9th, 2019. Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing Wednesday, January 9th, 2019, 7 p.m. Municipal Office Complex, Meeting Room 1. Purpose of the meeting is to obtain public input and review and discuss the potential language establishing control for animal ordinance and amendments to the Town of East Haddam's current trailer ordinance. All residents of the Town of East Haddam are welcome to attend. Proposed ordinances will be on the town website, www.easthaddam.org. For more information, call the First Selectman's Office, 860-873-5021, or email admin@easthaddam.org. Dated 3rd day of January 2019, Emmett Lyman, First Selectman. Apologize for skipping over that. And now, any comments or any thoughts about the trailer ordinance, what's being proposed here? Jimmy, I think it's all about the animals.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I've got one question. Is not the trailer park more of a zoning? It's strictly
Not a
a
trailer
zoning
park.
issue than it is, or trailers, period.
No,
It's
the,
all about zoning, isn't it?
Well, it is and it isn't, because in the ordinance was created in 1957, prior to the formation of the zoning commission in 1961. It is the leading document on the books. It wasn't until 75 that they said, you know what, the Board of Selectmen said, we're not enforcing this, we'll keep it on our books, but we'll let planning and zoning enforce it. So, it's just the way it is written in the sequence of events. So the Planning and Zoning Commission does enforce it, because we've been granted the powers by the Board of Selectmen back in 75, but it's on the books as is, and it's just as easy to keep it where it is and keep amending it as we go along.
Yes, sir.
Todd Gelston, 50 Bogle Road. Is it fair to say that if one of these trailers was to be used, it can be used year-round? Recreational trailers can be used year-round?
Well, they may or may not, but not on the property.
This has nothing to do with the amount of use of a trailer, just its size and location,
That's,
and installation.
yes. This is, right now, the way it's written, you can't have a trailer, is the way the ordinance is written, you can't have a trailer for use unless it pre-existed prior to the writing of this ordinance. So I think we have 3 or 4, but it was written for that purpose too. But no, someone can't come in on a vacant lot and set up and use a trailer. No.
Okay. Next question I have, the definition of the word trailer as applied to this ordinance. You mentioned construction trailers. You mean trailers that have roofs, used to house people, offices. Is that what you mean here? You don't mean trailers to haul equipment or other things.
Right.
It doesn't really say that here, though, as far as I can tell. I suggest you make that clear in the ordinance. I'm no lawyer, but it would help. Yeah, it says, okay.
Camping, travel, recreation.
Yeah, I saw that too, thank you. But it says on a camper, coach, and travel trailer. Up the top, it just says trailers. So what you mean is those camper, coach, or travel trailers? You don't mean any other kind of trailers, although on the bottom.
There's all sorts of breakdowns on here. It's all broken down in the definition, so they are separated out.
But it doesn't mean trailers to haul equipment, or animals,
No.
or produce,
No.
or wood. Okay, I suggest make that clear. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Jimmy. Pretty straightforward. There's some confusion at one point that we were introducing 26 foot as a limit, and it's actually to get rid of the 26 feet as a limit that we're doing this. As far as the animal ordinance, control of animals, Michael Saki's not here. I'm going to call on you, Jimmy, to help us out with this one too.
Okay.
And we do have a couple of letters, one from Kevin Staley, to whomever it may concern, in my anticipated absence from the hearing, please submit into the record the following comments for the public hearing on January 9th, 2019 regarding the proposed control of animal ordinance. I raised 2 concerns and asked additional clarifying language be added to the draft of the ordinance as it is presently written, accessed on January 3rd via the town website. A definition or scope for animal is not provided, although a reference to animals is made numerous times. Under livestock, the definition can be read to include pollinating insects, bees, that are used for agriculture and hobbyist purposes. If pollinating insects are to be included as livestock, and it is my understanding that they are under CGS, I know that the USDA does include them for their purposes. No exception is provided for pollinating insects roaming at large. Respectfully submitted, Kevin Staley, 278 Town Street, East Haddam, Connecticut. And then the American Kennel Club, addressing the East Haddam Board of Selectmen Town, and once again, this is not a Board of Selectmen meeting, it's a public hearing. Town Office Building, Post Office Box 385, Plains Road, Moose, Connecticut. Proposed control of animal ordinance. Dear Board of Selectmen member, several East Haddam residents have contacted the American Kennel Club, AKC, concerning the proposed changes to the town's animal ordinances. On their behalf and on behalf of the tens of thousands of responsible dog owners and future dog owners in Connecticut, the American Kennel Club wishes to share some concerns with the proposed changes and respectfully request additional amendments to address those concerns. As you know, the American Kennel Club was established in 1884, promotes the study, breeding, exhibiting, and advancement of purebred dogs. AKC is the world's largest not-for-profit purebred dog registry and represents over 5,100 dog clubs nationally, including 57 in Connecticut. We advocate for the purebred dog as a family companion, advance canine health and well-being, protecting the rights of dog owner, and promotes the ideals of responsible dog ownership. The AKC supports reasonable and enforceable laws that protect the welfare and health of purebred dogs and do not restrict the rights of breeders and owners who take their responsibility seriously. The town's draft ordinance primarily follows current state law. Yet we submit the following two recommendations for your consideration. First, the proposal adopts definitions not found in state law, including at large, under restraint, and vicious. However, at large is also used in the definition of public nuisance. So while the draft makes it clear it does not intend to ban hunting dogs, the text at A would result in hunting dogs being labeled a public nuisance. Therefore, we recommend that the definition of at large be amended to read any animal upon premises other than the premises of said owner or keeper, unless the owner or lawful occupant of such premises grants permission thereafter and not under the control of the owner or keeper capable of keeping the animal under restraint. This shall not be construed to limit or prohibit the use of designated off-leash space such as dog parks, hunting, herding, or sled dogs, or the conducting of field trials. In addition, we believe the draft overly generalizes the authority of the animal control officer, who is guided in state law to follow specific procedures depending upon a variety of circumstances. Therefore, to eliminate ambiguity and confusion regarding the scope of animal control officer's authority, we encourage making the following change. Strike the second sentence in 4, enforcement A, enforcement authority, and insert the following sentence. Said officer shall work with the town's police officers and shall have the authority to investigate complaints, impound and destroy animals, issue citations, and take actions consistent with CGS 22-327-367A. American Kennel Club of the Connecticut Federation of Dog Clubs and responsible dog owners and their constituents who are their members are available to further assist you. Please do not hesitate to contact me for any reason. Gives his phone number and or stacy.ober@ake.org. Sincerely, Stacy Ober, JD. And gives his credentials beyond that. In any case, those are the two letters that we do have. And once again, Jim, can you address this? I'm looking at it and there's quite a bit here. And unfortunately, Mike had to be with his son down south and was not able to be here, our animal control officer.
You heard what he said. Mike's not here. Do not shoot the messenger. All right? The nuts and bolts of this, though, is that because the town of East Haddam does not have an ordinance, when Mike does do these citations, as allowed currently under Connecticut general statutes, taxpayers of East Haddam get a pittance come back from the state for these citations. This is something that Mike brought up 2-3 years ago. This is insane. You do not have an ordinance. So when I go and write out a $100 citation for somebody who does have some animal that's roaming, wandering in the street, causing accidents or potential accidents, I give them that citation and then it goes right straight to the state of Connecticut. So, and as the kennel clerk said, generally this ordinance is in concurrence with the Connecticut general statutes. So, he's been practicing these, activities. He's been doing it all along, but every time he does it, it goes straight to the state, it doesn't come here, and he said, it's about time that we actually write up an ordinance that would benefit us, because we pay them a salary. We do have to house animals if they're lost and we can't find the owners. There's vet bills that go with it, and sometimes they're horrendous vet bills when he finds things that are, wrong. So the real nuts and bolts of this ordinance, it's not so much that we're creating something that doesn't exist. It exists. What we're doing is saying we're going to take the authorization of it and have the ability, after we get a citation officer in place and an ordinance for that. I took care of that. But after we get that in place, that we, the town, will be able to collect the fees and then turn it back, then at least then you go to the Board of Finance and say, we had 72 citations giving out, we had 16 vet bills, balance the books for once. So that's what this is really about.
Yes.
March Calthorpe, 42 or 44 Mount Manassas. Can you tell me how many dog violations? Because I think we're talking mostly about dog violations is what you are saying to me, and a dog officer is what you're saying.
Yeah.
This covers livestock, maybe bees, whatever,
No,
but we're talking mostly dogs. My other part to this is the unintended consequences that animal rights people will see this and they will come in, and us who raise, show, breed dogs are at risk. This is the unintended consequence of pointing out that people own dogs and have a right to own dogs, and it doesn't only include dogs, and it goes into livestock, and now you have to put pajamas on your cows, whatever. And it's not funny, because the American Kennel Club has come in with these proposals to clear up some of the language, just because we are continually fighting unintended consequences. And I happen to be a member of the delegate body for the American Kennel Club that I represent, my all-breed club, and I'm aware of how much money the American Kennel Club spends, and the thousands, hundreds of thousands, not even a drop in the bucket, according to, or versus the animal rights people. I just am afraid by putting some kind of an arrow that animal rights people will come in and they will say, now what you need to do is you can no longer, and there is an ordinance now in the City Hall in New Haven is talking about, or West Haven or East Haven, I'm not sure which, about controlling how many dogs you can have, how many dogs you can breed, how old, just controlling the whole thing. So, again, I don't want it, I understand money, but I also understand our hobby, our livelihood. I mean, and it's not that we make money at showing dogs as a hobby. And this could affect dogs on infinitum, just any kind of dog. And I just hate to open up a chapter because this town wants money from the state of Connecticut when our hobbies and our love for dogs, cows, pigs, whatever, could be really at risk.
So I can't answer how many dogs, but I can also tell you, it's not just dogs. Being that who I am, where I live, and how long I've been here, I'm probably the second person that gets called and said, can you identify where possibly this horse came from, or this cow came from? And that happens. We understand that. And what it says is it has to be, an excessive thing. So animals do get loose. We all understand that happens. There are some people, and it seems to be, from Mike's discussion, it seems to be that the livestock issue is a greater issue in East Hampton, which is more than willing to do it, where they have just people who are unwilling and don't want to. put up the proper fences and closures for the animals. Seems like that's not an issue here. I wish he was here to talk about it. But the reality is he is enforcing these now, so we're not creating anything new.
Like the language.
Well, it's the same language that the state has now. So
No,
that-
it isn't,
it's
because
close.
the American well,
It's
close
close,
does not
but
help.
we can amend that. We can amend that. If I was
And
privy,
that's my concern.
if I was privy to that language until just now, I'd have said, okay, let's take a look at it and research it and amend it, and that's why we're having a public hearing. It's one that he gets calls, and he does, but that'll be something that he can answer. I mean, this will eventually, if it goes forward, go to a town meeting.
Ron?
I'm Ron Gross, 9 Newbury. I'm the chair of the Agriculture Commission for East Haddam. And I wanted to clarify a couple of things. First, to address your concerns, because of what I do for a living, I have been working with animals and the use of animals and training surgeons for 45 years. No matter how you word it, no matter what you do, you are going to have to deal with PETA and with physicians for responsible medicine and the like. That is a given. And so I think that from my standpoint, that's a non-starter. Understanding your concerns, having dealt with it for 45 years, you need to look past that. The ordinance was run through and debated ad nauseum by the Agriculture Commission. And the idea is not just the finances of collecting it, but to protect the animals owners, and the town's folks. We have a right to farm here. That language that was specifically put in here was put in here to be not vague, but liberal enough so that the right to farm with respect to cattle and horses and such would be protected, so that the animals would be protected. And when there is a nuisance, when there is an animal that's getting loose, not once, not twice, but is constantly wandering across the street and causing crashes or near crashes, the owners of those animals are held responsible. The owners of the animals are also held responsible when the animal well-being is not being enforced. The animals are not being cared for. So that's where the vet bills come in. If the animal control officer needs to remove an animal from a farm, or a horse, or a dog for that matter, because of maltreatment, those all add up. So this is to protect us, the citizens, us, the animal owners, us who aren't AKC members but actually have mutts and rescues and all of those not so fancy dogs, so that we can keep those dogs and own them and love them, same as we own our horses. I was told never to name your cow, but my wife did, and the goats. You know, it's to give us, the people of this town, the privilege and the right to own these animals and the obligation to maintain their well-being and their control. So that's how this ordinance came about. That's how the language in this ordinance was constructed, and it was done so with a specific desire to be broad enough, broad in its reach, and broad in its approach. I hope that answers some of the questions. Thank you.
Bob Goldthorpe, same as hers. I only have a couple of questions. One is, what control, or what are the qualifications of an animal control officer? Because you're giving them the right to destroy animals. And also the word excessive. What's excessive? 10 barks, 100 barks. That's all I have.
So I can answer one of them. The animal control officer, it's a statutory requirements that are on there under the state statutes. And there's programs that they go through and examinations and testing, that they have to go through for the training programs to get that.
And they're licensed.
And they're licensed, so
They
that,
are definitely
they are
licensed.
licensed, yes.
By the state.
As far what seems excessive, it's just like everything else, you know, I went through this on other things, there are subjective, measures, but, you know, if you have somebody who's qualified, you have somebody who's licensed, you have somebody who's experienced and out there, it's one of those things that he'll probably end up saying the same thing I am. You know when you hear it, you know, if it is or isn't. Because it's a judgment call. And that's,
Is it more than one day?
oh, no, he's had, you know, he's had those discussions with people. Look, something was going on, there's somebody working on a utility pole, what did you expect the dog to do? You know, there's gotta be some common sense. We just, you know, throughout both sides of these actions, there's gotta be some common sense of what's going on.
And I would hope he would have discrimination when it comes to destroy.
Yeah,
And that's not even part of this ordinance.
great hesitation on destroying. And I don't get every phone call, but I get a lot of them. So I have the opportunity to forward and find out what's happening and talk to them about it. And I do know that our animal control officer, you gotta push him pretty hard before he finally says enough. You're gonna get a ticket. You've got to stop this. It can't go on. So it isn't just the first time out. It isn't just the first problem. Dog comes out and attacks somebody and bites them, yeah, that's gonna be responded to. The dog wanders off its property, that's gonna be, keep it on your property.
I kinda took that to read that it was a joint decision between the town police and the animal control officer to destroy an animal.
You know, the police are not involved in every case at this point. They might be involved if it's bad enough or there's something, but there's no requirement that he work with the police in each case.
Vicki Riley Pott from the Pott Farm at 520 Town Street. I'm hearing primarily issues about dogs, and I think that this is a bit of an overreach to include livestock in this. There are plenty of state laws on the books that handle things like fencing, and of course, anybody who has a brain in their head has liability insurance in case they have an animal, a large animal that gets out. But I do think that this is quite an overreach. Also, I think that certain about there's a certain lack of neighborliness in this. For instance, our farm is right across the street from what used to be the old parsonage at the Congregational Church. A couple years ago, some new folks moved in. It was getting to be about mid-late October, and we were going to wean our calves. To someone who doesn't know it, it could sound as if the animals are being abused. The mothers were visible to the calves, but they were mooing incessantly. We prepared the new neighbors and let them know that they might be hearing some extra noise, but it was or would be time limited. I do think that this is an overreach.
Okay, thank you.
Todd Gelston, 50 Bogle Road. I have two concerns, there's two right now for this ordinance. One is communication, involves communication, the other involves appeal. If there is a violating animal, whether it's a dog, cat, or a cow, or a horse, how is that communicated to the owner? It isn't mentioned in here how that's done. I think it's very important that the owner be informed as soon as possible that the animal's a problem.
Well, assuming it can be identified, that's automatic.
Well, it's not said in here though.
Well,
It's all in the hands of the animal control officer.
That's who's supposed to do it.
yeah, I mean,
That's his job.
that's one part of his job is to contact the owner. That goes without saying.
Well, I could say it in here, because I'm not sure that happens all the time. The second thing is appeal.
Should we issue a ticket, we are required to have an appeal board, and the opportunity to have that appeal. This is the folder for it right here. Quite complex, state law covers how we do it, and prior to issuing any tickets, we have to have an appeal board in place. And the opportunity to appeal is clearly defined as part of the issued ticket.
Okay, I don't see here in the ordinance though, did I miss it?
To clarify that, Emmett, right now, for some of these things, state statute covers, because we don't have it
Tickets will not be issued until this board is in place
for the town.
for the town.
Okay, so there is an appeal process already,
Yeah.
but
With the state.
with the state.
If you get a ticket, you plead not guilty, have a hearing.
How many people know that?
Anyone who gets a ticket from the town will know that because it's part of it.
Okay, they'll be told.
It's
Also right
told,
on the ticket.
it's written on the ticket,
Very good.
the whole process
I
is
haven't
there.
had the unfortunate circumstance of getting a ticket, obviously, so hope it stays that way with me. Thank you. The second thing is, there's no ordinance now. Is that correct?
Nothing.
So the problem we're trying to correct is place an ordinance into these towns. Now, I imagine a lot of work went to prepare this ordinance. Are there any other towns in Connecticut that have a similar ordinance?
It's modeled after any number of them.
Well, it's modeled after some of them, but I gotta be honest with you. There's a whole bunch, probably about 125 to 145 communities that are giving the money to the state of Connecticut. And unless you want to count Lebanon's, you get $5 fine if you let your swine roam on the town green. I'm not making that up. It's- So, so there has not been a lot of sophistication on this. It just hasn't, and it's surprised us. We thought, you're right, a lot of work went into this. Gonna say, well, this will be easy. You know, typically when you find an ordinance, you just steal it from somebody else and go with it. No. And the other part about it is now we had to crop it back because yes, we did grab those ordinances that were written in New Haven and New Fairfield and all these communities that just are so wound up so tight, it's pathetic. So we backed off on the majority. We went down to just the basic. Is it roaming? Is it vicious? Is there some public disturbance? And then we also took care of there was no penalty, which means if you bring your dog to the park, you gotta kind of clean up after it. But that was the 4 basic items. We cropped back everything else.
Okay, I have one more comment, is this ordinance, there's no perfect ordinance that I know of. Nothing perfect is made by man. We try, but it's not perfect. So if this ordinance is passed, whatever it evolves to, when you come down to a vote in the town and receives town approval, that ordinance, if it doesn't work out that well, and there's things we can improve upon it, I just want to make it clear to the folks here that we can come back to the town, like another group, and offer some changes, correct? It's not
Correct.
locked in stone.
Eagerly.
You have a whole thick ordinance book that has so many amendments to it. It's amazing. And part of the amendments are, maybe it's technology, maybe it's times, but also too, that didn't work. Let's try this.
Okay,
I mean,
thank you.
the trailer ordinance, 26 feet really doesn't cut the mustard anymore. That's why we're back here looking at it. Yes.
Hi, my name is Kayla. I live at 59 Wickham Road. I just have a little bit of concern about the livestock noise kind of suggestion in this. Again, I might not have any problem. If I actually have questions, is probably a better way to put it. So, there is very much like Ms. Costa, there's like inherent noise with livestock. And I'm also the 4-H program coordinator for Middlesex County, so this affects many of the students that I have in the community. From an educational standpoint, I don't want anyone, I want to be able to counsel people that are like, I heard you can't have chickens because they crow in the morning in East Haddam. I need to help those children understand that no, in fact, it's a right to farm community and you can have chickens. And I really believe that actually is what you guys are going for, but I can't just, I'm not Nostradamus, I can't just decide that's what you're going for. I need to be here and ask if that's what you're going for. So, so my point is to that and to like, when it comes to nuisance noise and livestock, is it decibel? Is it duration? Is it time of day? Is it frequency? Like, what data are we using so that I can best prepare my students for things that people will say to them on both sides of this argument? So as an educator, I'm just pleading for.
Let me take this one.
Well, I can comment a little bit myself. My rooster, he likes to crow all night,
Well, there you go.
but he's not steady and he's back far enough so it's not a problem. And I kind of like it. Nobody's gonna go crazy. This is the dog that's just going nuts.
Okay.
Been tied out overnight and he starts at dusk and he goes until first thing in the morning. That's the guy that we gotta deal with.
All right, and you gotta understand what I'm
So,
asking.
and also, his rooster, mine too. As owner, I wouldn't have written this thing up if I thought it was gonna, adversely affect, because my wife would kill me. Because of the goats and the roosters and all that. Animals make there's normal aspects. Once in the 23 or 24 years I've been here, did I have to actually discuss something with somebody about a chicken. And it was a rooster, and she had a slick game with this. She would turn the light on at 2 o'clock in the morning to initiate the crowing to upset the neighbors. That was, I said, no,
That's not nice.
that's not what we're looking at. So the normal aspects of having animals and having a small farm and hobby farms and all those things, we're trying to encourage.
Okay.
What really don't want to see is somebody continually, have that animal out in the road, or as like Emmett says, have that animal just abandoned and left out there barking continuously.
I completely, thank you. That helps a lot.
Ron, you had,
The last I checked, there were no randomized controlled studies about the level of noise that animals make.
Well,
And I say that sort of in jest, but the reason why I bring that up is in reference to what we just heard from the PA farm. I know what that sounds like. We raise and then wean our horses when they're 4 months old. They're as loud as your cows. This is a farming community. This is a community that has the right to farm, whether it's cattle, horses, chickens, goats. We have a right to farm. I think, in all honesty, that this ordinance will probably promote the communication between neighbors. I am hoping that it is taken in the context of, hey, you just moved in here from Boston, New York, Chicago, pick a city. This is the thought process that has brought so many other folks here and that have maintained so many families for a couple of hundred years. This is what we do. Please, let's work together. If these guys are bothering you, maybe we could figure out a way to isolate them down the other end of the property. I think it will probably, if done right, it will probably help. And having Mike come into a situation and diffuse the contact between the neighbors might actually make a big difference. So I'd like to understand that you're concerned with this. I hear that. We as a commission heard that. The whole goal of this was to try and eliminate that angst and to promote the farming abilities, to keep it going, minimize the hassles, and take care of the people and take care of the animals. I hope that helps. I'm sorry, Ron Gross.
thank you, Ron. Yes, sir.
Hi, Bill McKinnon, Borden Road. Sort of a question of clarification about the ordinance itself. There's sort of I'm wondering if there's an overlap in authority between the proposed ordinance and the existing right to farm ordinance. I'm a farming family as well, and again, got the same deal, weaning calves, or having roosters, farm animals with noise. In farming here, chapter 203, our objectionable odor from livestock? And number two is noise from livestock or farm equipment used in normal, generally acceptable farming practices. I imagine that weaning calves would certainly fit on generally acceptable farming practices, as is having a reasonable amount of roosters, as is weaning foals. Does the right to farm ordinance, is the new ordinance, proposed ordinance, would that supersede the right to farm ordinance to a
The
ordinance? Or
complement.
where's mine? Sorry
No.
to throw a bunch of legalese at you.
No, it's not illegal. Actually, that ordinance clearly says the normal operation of a farm. If for some reason there's something excessive, then the animal control officer's gotta go out there and investigate it and find out why. And if he finds out that the farm is doing something that is not normal in that practice, some animals being tied to a stake and being abused, maybe that's why the noise is being created. But if it's a normal operation, he's gonna go next door and tell the neighbor, go, you haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
And then be done with it.
I suppose the one distinction would be in definitions under public nuisance subsection D is excessive or continuous barking, howling, whining, or any noise natural to said species which disturbs species of citizens nearby. I've had my sleep disturbed by my family's own cat, so I wonder if that. I think it sounds like many of us here in this room are concerned in particular about the concern of noise. I might perhaps recommend an addendum would be to just reference in subsection D of public nuisance definition, some manner of accommodation for acceptable for livestock. We already have an existing precedent set for like the farm, so we can all for cattle that are perhaps different than having 100 people in I don't want to disparage any people raisers. I know, just a thought consideration as to the language of the definition, the listing definition, just to include an accommodation for weeding wool.
The classic one that was unreasonable, I think it was over in Lebanon, that area. The guy was raising sweet corn, and he had an issue with raccoons. Set up a carbide cannon. All night long, every 15 minutes, the cannon fired. That was unreasonable. But you're gonna have to push it to get that far. And
Years ago, my family had chickens, and unfortunately, it turns out raccoons and foxes prefer to eat chickens as opposed to roosters. At one point, we had 19 roosters, a little excessive. Before calling them, our neighbors wrote us a very polite letter saying how we knew we were moving to a rural town, there's going to be rural noises, but having run your fans, all through the night so you can go off the noise of 19 roosters. That I would consider that our. Anyways, so happy. Thank you.
thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Chuck Smith, right over.
How you doing, Josh?
I've got, the noise issue is the thing that probably bothers me the most. The way it's written, I think it needs to be explained. Tolerances and tolerance levels of how much noise people that are unfortunately living or fortunately living next to you. I will commit a little something right now that I've had 2 occasions to visit our enforcement officer. And he chose to drive into my driveway. I didn't choose to drive into his. Second time, okay, by the time he caught up with the complaint, it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, the dog had barked 5 times. 5 times, I counted them. We wrote it down. And I had him in my driveway. I got a complaint, I gotta visit, gotta come see you. Okay, so I'm well experienced with Mike. Not that I like to see him, I don't want to see him. But the noise situation, and I will tell you this, the noise part in here will put neighbor against neighbor. Neighbor gets upset, neighbor gets mad at the other guy, and he says, I want to get you. And if your dog barks, and it won't, it's not a matter of how many barks Barking all night, I can understand, that's excessive. But 5 barks at the back door, and you've got animal control in your yard. Okay, this is being used. And I know it's being used. So that, where that break-off point's supposed to be, I don't know. I don't like wasting the man's time or tax dollars by having him come out to my place.
Well, I can speak for Mike, knowing that in a case like that, he addresses both sides of it.
Except that he didn't know it was only 5 barks. He counted a complaint of noise.
No, but once he has an explanation, he'll go back and say, what's going on here? And he doesn't limit it to one side of the discussion.
And I'm not so sure that maybe in this particular addendum that's here, that we should reference a little bit back to the state statute and the language and verbiage that's in there regarding like the appeal process, which you mentioned in your document here with an appeals board here in town. But it should be referenced to the state as well. That, there is a process, and it's quite definitive. So that I guess we're all bound to the state regulation, state statute first, and then we have our addendum added to that.
Well, I think one of the advantages of having our own is that the fines can be lower. I know that where speeding tickets can be issued by the town, very often it'll be $50 or $100, where the state's getting $200. So, if you're going to get caught for speeding, you might prefer to have a state cite or a town citation over a state citation. So there might be some small advantage in that for people.
But I thought the removal of animal waste, and I want to take a minute here because the removal of animal waste, okay, so we have our dogs at the town beach. I don't know if the sign says we're not, but anyway. So somebody's dog does it, it does
Yeah.
thing, and they walk off and leave it. And then the next person walks by, didn't see the dog, but complains about the poop in the beach. And we don't know where it came from. It might have been a couple of coyotes going through the night before.
Mm-hmm.
So it might want to be, kind of clarified a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Marge?
March Calthorpe, 44 Mountain S. Going back to the very beginning, I'd like to know what the charge is to the town of East Haddam annually or by the animal control officer for these infractions and vet bills. What are we talking about? Thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000? What is the amount that comes out of the budget to take care of these animals?
I don't have that offhand.
Can we get that information? I think it'd be important before we put in an ordinance to know if we're talking 5,000, 10,000, 100,000.
So you're asking what the care is for vets plus the keeping of the dog pound?
An average?
Yep.
Take it for maybe a 5-year period.
Yep.
Maureen Pearson, 82 Millington Road. I am pretty new to East Haddam, 5 years only, and do we have an ordinance about chaining dogs outside, like all night? I don't know if Connecticut has an anti-chaining law, some states do.
There's something in the state law about.
That's state, but there's nothing local.
So in East Haddam, you can chain a dog out all night?
If it's a state statute, then you have to follow the state statute.
I think that's covered by state law, particularly in cold weather. And that was a number of years ago now.
Covered meaning you shouldn't do it?
You can't do it, yeah.
Oh, it's against the law, okay.
But that's state, that's not
It wasn't
town.
mentioned in here and I just didn't know.
It's in existence already.
Deb Adams, 88 AP Gates Road. I think it might be a good idea when and if anything goes into place to have a way to collect some information. What types of complaints are they all for noise? Is it how many roaming animals, what type of animals are roaming? So that if and when amendments come up, we have some data to fall back on in the types of complaints and whatnot. And in cross-referencing state statute and the right to farm statutes, it would be good to set this in the context of the larger statutes, so that everybody does understand that you can't chain animals. It's state law, not everybody knows that, and you only read the East Haddam ones, oh, we can chain the animal, you know, so not everybody knows the other statutes, and maybe it'd be a good idea to kind of like put them all together, and here's East Haddam's part, here's in the context of the state pieces, so everybody understands. The other piece is, you know, when we read this, it was like, okay, well, we gotta put up a fence. We live on the corner, and we have tons of walkers going down AP Gates Road and Warner Road. And our golden retriever will just sit there and say, come pet me, come in the yard and pet me. And the Papillon will sit on the porch and bark at you until he doesn't see you halfway down the road. So it's sort of, and he's not gonna do anything to you, but he's gonna bark at you, and that's noisy. It's noisy. But again, in reading this, the first thing we thought, and listening to everybody and the intent of this, I think the intent is good, but it's not written well enough to understand really the intent just by the purpose you have. The intent is to maintain the farming community, to be within reason of responsible ownership of animals. We might want to think about fleshing that out a little bit more to put in some intent and reasonableness, that you don't get so many calls just because your neighbor doesn't like to hear your dog bark 5 times at the door.
Anyone else? All right, I think that wraps it up. Anything else, Jimmy, or?
I'm good.
We're good. Thank you very much for coming out. Cold night.
Quick question, what's next in the process? What's the next step?
We're gonna take a look at this, try to work some of what was said into this, and we go to a town meeting, and we actually will vote on it at the town meeting, up or down. And
So
this
will
is,
there be another meeting similar to this?
well, it's a town meeting at that point, and it's announced very much the same, and you come in and you get to vote on it. That's the legislative body for the town. We don't, you know, I can't create an ordinance and the Board of Selectmen approve it and have it go into the books. The town makes that decision.
At the time it's brought to a town meeting, will there be an opportunity for audience of citizens to offer amendments to the ordinance?
You can discuss it, offer amendments, that you vote on the amendments.
Although I'd rather you send any potential amendments ahead of time so I can vet them through and get them in there, you know, as possible. If you've got an idea, just email me, call me.
Bring it in up front so we can get it in there.
So that I can then, you know, then we can kind of check it against state statute and everything else. Because the last thing you want to do is at the meeting say, I got a great idea, and then we go, yeah, but is that legal? Can we do that?
Okay. Once again, thank you very much. Good night.